Hello, welcome to Real Recipes from Family and Community Health Sciences, Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Somerset County. I'm Daryl Minch. I am the Family and Community Health Sciences educator for Rutgers Cooperative Extension in Somerset County. Today we're going to make Irish soda bread. This is our Irish soda bread that I made last night. I will say it was very difficult for me not to have a slice for breakfast. It is certainly a favorite in my household around this time of the year. So it's a really easy dish to make. The recipe I'm using comes from Betty Crocker, a cookbook that I used growing up. But you can go to their website, and I will put the link in later, but on their website is their recipe for Irish soda bread. It's really easy and uses very few ingredients. So I'm going to set this aside, and we'll bring this back out at the end. Irish soda bread came about with using ingredients that families had on hand. It was really good because there were a number of times during Irish history where famine was a problem. So these are ingredients that they could use, that they had readily on hand to make a bread that they could use with tea or to mop up a stew, juices, so it has a lot of use. In Ireland, they grow a soft wheat, which is appropriate for a quick bread like the Irish soda bread, not so good for yeast bread. So again, making use of what they had on hand. So you'll need an all-purpose flour. I'm going to add about half a cup of the whole wheat flour, and I'm doing that for flavor, and yes, it adds a little bit of fiber. You wouldn't want to use a lot of whole wheat flour because it has more, too much flavor. Again, you can experiment a little bit, but that's what I'm going to use here. So it's 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and then I added the half a cup of whole wheat flour. To that, we're going to add our leavenings, which are 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Okay, so 1 teaspoon of baking powder. We're going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And this will give you a nice rise. Set that aside. We're going to add half a teaspoon of salt. And 2 tablespoons of sugar. If you want to type in the chat what some of your favorite foods are for celebrating St. Patrick's Day, I will say that according to my family, we have just a tiny bit of Irish on my paternal grandmother's side. I did bring along my lucky leprechaun. Leprechauns figure a lot in some of the mythology in Ireland. A good friend gave me that years ago, so I thought it was fitting for today. So I'm going to stir these dry ingredients together. And then I'm going to add 1/3 cup of raisins. If you like raisins like I do and you want to add just a little bit more, you could. And I'm going to stir these in a little bit to give them a nice coat with the flour. And then you're going to add 3 tablespoons of softened butter. And I just let this sit out a little bit this morning, and it softened right up. And you're going to cut that into this dish so it resembles fine crumbs like you would pie dough. I'm using a pastry blender, but you could take a couple of knives together. A lot of recipes say to do it with your fingers. I just don't feel like having all that butter and flour all over my fingers. So I can't, unfortunately, I can't see the chat right now. I know for me tomorrow, I am going to make some corned beef. Lots of recipes out there. Usually have it maybe once a year. It is a very salty meat, so I certainly don't want to have that often. I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to have the boiled cabbage with it because I'm not a boiled cabbage fan, but we will have some potatoes of some kind and the corned beef, and of course I have the Irish soda bread. You want to preheat your oven to 375, and I'm going to use a baking sheet with some parchment on it, or else you could grease it. You could also cook it in a cast iron skillet or Dutch oven, which has been well greased. That's pretty traditional to cook at that. Gets a nice brown bottom. Okay, we're almost done. I want to mention a little bit about flour safety. I just participated in a food safety conference, and among other things, they did talk about the safety of flour. A lot of us grew up licking the cake batter bowl or tasting the cookie dough. We now know that's not good practice, so we do not recommend ever eating raw dough. And also, flour is a raw agricultural product. It is not cooked or heated in any way before it comes to our homes for use in baking and recipes. And so there are possible points during that harvest, storage, and delivery where bacteria could get into the grain, and then, given the right conditions, could make us ill. So you always want to treat it as you would any raw product, like a raw meat or a raw seafood. So you're going to wash your hands afterwards. You're not going to eat that batter or the flour. Wash surfaces really well, just to protect ourselves against any potential contamination. All right, so I have my butter well mixed in. It's really fine. And now we're going to add the ingredient that gives it a lot of flavor, and that is buttermilk. So buttermilk is a cultured product. They said years ago they would have used soured milk, but rather than something that's really starting to spoil, they add cultures to it to thicken it. It has that nice tangy flavor. It takes 3/4 of a cup. You want to shake it a little first so it's nice and distributed. Now, if you don't have buttermilk, I do usually try to buy it at this time when I'm making a recipe, but there are times where I've made recipes where it calls for buttermilk and I don't feel like running out to the store and I don't have any. So for that, we can take it's usually 1 cup of milk, and then add a tablespoon of lemon juice, vinegar, depending on the recipe. Stir it up well and let it sit, and it will thicken a little bit, and it gives it that tang that you're looking for, and it'll also help interact with the baking soda in the recipe to give you that rise. Another technique is sometimes they add a little bit of sour cream to the milk. Again, stirring it up, let it sit a little bit, and it gives you that same profile. You can look up online to check the amounts. So that's always an option if you don't have buttermilk in the house. So what I like to do is make a little bit of a well in the middle, and I pour in my buttermilk. And then we're going to mix in till we get all the flour absorbed. If you buy your buttermilk and then you make a loaf or 2 of this bread, you go, now what? What am I going to do with the rest of this? Few options. Buttermilk is great in pancake and waffle batter. Buttermilk pancakes and buttermilk waffles are very common. You can also use it as a liquid to coat, say, chicken, and then coat it with crumbs. It's the binder that keeps the crumbs on the chicken. It has a nice little tang to the dish. And I've also, some people like to drink it. they can, you can freeze it. So I have sometimes frozen in recipe size amounts, say 1 cup of buttermilk, and then I could take it out when I need it for something. So I'm going to show you this. So I have a kind of a loose dough. It's not coming together right. So at this point, we're going to take a little bit of flour and put a little on my hand because I'm going to work this in the bowl. I already washed my hands. And what we're doing is we want to make sure we get all the crumbs together, that it holds into one cohesive loaf. You don't really need to knead it a lot. And I'm going to put a little bit on my board here. Put this out. And I'm just flattening it down so I can get these unincorporated crumbs in. And now we're going to knead it probably only a couple minutes. Again, our goal here is not to develop the gluten in the bread in any way, but it's to get the flour and the raisins well incorporated and for the loaf to hold together. Just fold it, press it together. Oops. Some other things to do for celebrating St. Patrick's Day, which are kind of fun. When my child was young, I used to use green food coloring and milk and orange juice and all sorts of fun things, and blame it on the mischievous leprechauns. Maybe focus on the green vegetables, peppers, zucchini, spinach, have a nice spinach salad, avocado, all those green things. Last Friday, Jen showed you a nice green smoothie. Lots of variations on there, adding some naturally green foods like spinach or avocado to a yogurt or other smoothie. Will give it that subtle green color, or if you want to amp up the color a little bit, you can always add a couple drops of green food coloring. So this is coming together pretty well. I'll show this to you real quick. Just want it to be smooth. All right, so then I'm going to, so it's coming together really nice. I'm just going to shape it into a ball, flatten it down a little bit. So it's kind of like a dome shape on top. Press in any raisins that are sticking out. And you're going to have a loaf that's probably around 6 inches across. You can, it's not an exact science. You don't have to worry about that. But the other traditional piece for the Irish soda bread at the end is to cut across on the top. This is probably, you want to cut with like a serrated knife or a very sharp knife down, maybe like a quarter of the way through the loaf. This was done to ward off evil spirits, or one place I read said it let out the fairies. So it's kind of rooted in superstition or other religious views. So I have a nice X in my loaf. I'm going to put it on my parchment baking sheet, and it's going into the oven at 375 for 35 to 40 minutes. Now I'm just going to step away 1 minute and wash my hands. I don't want to touch my finished product with my floured hands. So again, our finished product would be nice and brown on top. When you tap the loaf, it sounds kind of hollow. I would keep it in a sealed paper bag, a plastic bag or container to keep it nice and fresh. So I'm going to slice off a slice here. Show you the inside. So we have some nicely distributed raisins, and I like mine just plain, or sometimes I put a little jam or just a little bit of butter on it. As I say, great for breakfast, snack, lunch, and it's also used with a lot with stews. So I'm wishing you a wonderful, happy St. Patrick's Day. I hope you have a great day and enjoy some nice Irish soda bread. Thanks. Have a nice good day.